Hey, Micah, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
How you doing, man? First off, appreciate the opportunity. Little bit of background about myself. My name is Micah Pellerin, nickname Musa. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. Went to college. I was a finance and econ guy. Hit a growth spurt. Got super lucky. Ended up playing in the NFL for 4 years. And I always say on calls, the truth is, don't be intimidated by the fact that I played in the NFL for 4 years. I only have one more career tackle, assuming you didn't play in the NFL or play defense, than the people I'm on the call with. Did an eat, pray, love year, had a great time. Decided, A, I don't have that much money to just run around gallivanting around the world, but B, also wanted to find, what was the next chapter in life. So I went to business school, went to Indiana University, um, did finance for real, studied marketing, corporate innovation, started working at 3M in a corporate strat role, moved over, became an investment manager on the CVC side at 3M for a year, and then just decided, I want to do something different. I want to get involved in tech. Found an opportunity at Microsoft where I work now with what's called the HTP team. That's the high tech partnerships team, where we've basically been given leverage, been given license, to leverage the entire Microsoft ecosystem to drive strategic partnerships with unicorn companies, namely. So I know partnerships is a very vague word, so let me unpack that a little bit. It includes investment, albeit from corp dev or M12, that's our CVC arm. It also means go-to-market support, co-branding support, white labeling up to technologies, integrating the technologies into our tech stack, go-to-market, co-branding, the whole kit and caboodle. Now, understand that that's not the case for each and every deal, but different elements of those of what I mentioned are part of my utility belt for engaging with unicorn companies. So yeah.
So, when you were in school, was the objective clearly you made it to professional athletics, which is an enormous milestone in and of
Right.
itself,
Hmm.
but you studied, or did you really get into college, or was college just kind of a way to get to the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, so my mom is a doctor, my dad's a lawyer. So the
So,
truth
yeah,
is,
pressure.
yeah, as far as like academia is concerned, I was always aware that, okay, look, there's an opportunity for me to do this. I'm probably going to have to get some sort of graduate degree to some
Yeah.
extent to really understand from a technical perspective what it is that I want to do. So I knew I kind of had a window where I said, all right, whatever I do after undergrad, I should swing for the fences. And like I said, I hit it in the intro. I hit a growth spurt. So I was smaller. I was like 5'9", 150 pounds. And then in 18 months, I kind of grew to what I am now, right? Which is like going from 5'8", 150 to 6'1", 200 pounds.
Um,
And so, yeah, that coupled with the fact I was halfway athletic, once I started hitting people and I noticed that they were moving now, I said, you know what, let me just go all in on this football thing. We can figure everything else out later. And, I was super fortunate that, my number was called and I was able to play for a minute.
yeah. And how did that, or what tricks did that play on your head? Because as a young guy coming, I mean, that's pretty much the lottery, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. And as far as the tricks that played on my head, I think what it really did for me was expanding my concept of what's possible, right? And really reinforced the value of discipline. I'm here. I'm not even gonna call it my home office, but I'm here in a room in my house with the whiteboard behind me. I'm super organized when it comes to how I address and approach whatever problems I'm looking to solve. And I think one of the benefits of playing, collegiate sports and ultimately professional sports, sports in general, in any organized way, is that, there's a program, right? And every day you have the opportunity to follow the program, right? And I think, just that's the compounding effect of doing such. I was able to see it, manifest itself in me getting the opportunity to play in the NFL. So that's probably the main trick. Yeah, it's just that discipline and organization.
And that's what you got from the coach and the team.
Mhm. Mhm, mhm, and you internalize it, right? Because it's just your environment, right? And that's sort of, and I'd also jump and add in there like radical accountability, right? Each and every day we practice is filmed, and then at the conclusion of that practice, a couple hours later, you watch practice with all of your peers, and they say, Brian, what are you doing right here? Everybody else is doing this. You're not doing this. And they say, look, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. you just won't play, right? And
Here.
whatever consequences associated. In the NFL, it means you get cut, or if you're a starter, so forth and so on. In college, you just don't play. Maybe you lose a scholarship. In high school, maybe you don't get the opportunity to play and extend your playing career, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that sort of accountability is big too. It's something I take pride in, is being accountable and responsible. So.
And so when that ends, and then you went to get an MBA, is that kind of the
Mm-hmm.
path?
Mm-hmm.
What was your thinking there? Because now all of a sudden the world's very different.
Right. Well, I knew for me that I knew what sports meant, right? So I have a bunch of buddies that are in front offices, a bunch of buddies that are coaching, Power Five schools and things of that effect. And I said, well, you know what? Growing up, I wanted to be a banker, right? I'm not a quant by any means. I'm not like the best numbers guy, but I'm decent. And that's why I studied like finance, econ. I said, well, what do I look like outside of the sports context?
Yeah.
Right. And not only that, I mean, I started a couple businesses, was involved in a couple businesses in New Orleans. I wanted to expand my concept of, my knowledge of big business, right? So much of my understanding of business was localized, right? Like small LLC, 5, 10 employees,
Yeah.
we're doing all different sorts of things, right? I said, man, what does it look like? What do these monoliths look like, right? And I wanted to understand that. And that's why I went to school, was really just to develop that skill set. And from a technical perspective, I think I had a lot of the intangibles coming in, like some military vets and stuff like that, but really at a technical a technical lens, understand, okay, what does it look like to read a 10K? What does a go-to-market strategy look like, right? What does supply chain look like, right? And start to give myself an opportunity to say no to some things, to get out of the whole boiling the ocean thing, trying to figure out like, oh, well, do I want to do this today or that today? Business school gave me the opportunity to say, okay, this is what the world looks like. We're going to throw everything at you. And I can start to say immediately, like, you know what? I don't want to do accounting no matter what. And that's not no offense to accountants. My dad's an accountant, but I know I don't want to do that. Right. And I start to programmatically assign value to the different functions or industries that I'm interested in as a consequence of that. So that's why I chose to go to business school.
And what excites you today?
Man, right. A little bit of what I'm doing right now, right?
Yeah.
So my
Sounds like
role,
it. Yeah.
yeah, I'm having a good time, right? So I mean, every week, C-suite executives for unicorn companies, right? So they're already pushing the narrative in their own way, like fighting upstream, because it's a very competitive market, a very competitive industry, especially right now. Learning a lot from them, and then also finding ways and opportunities to help them accomplish their set goals, right, and missions. And it requires a certain level of creativity, right? It's not programmatic. Like our role within Microsoft, the unique thing about it is, everything is bespoke, right? Nothing exists in a vacuum. There isn't a 101. I can't look at a checklist and say, okay, I asked this question, now I ask this question. No, it's it's completely different every time. So yeah, it's definitely given me a lot of excitement and enjoyment.
And I got to speculate that
Mhm.
Microsoft's a matrix organization. Is that
Mhm. Mhm.
okay? And you got a great job coming out of grad school. How did you do that? Was
Mhm.
that through networking, or you recruited, or?
Yeah. So I was super fortunate going into business school to be a part of what's called the consortium. So in that they have a conference in advance of, your first semester of business school, where a large number of employers make themselves available for you to recruit for said summer MBA position.
Okay.
Right. So the consortium is a program designed to help support minority MBA applicants, what have you, and they have, as you would imagine, like the top 20 schools in the country, or top 20 MBA schools, depending on how you rank them, at these said conferences. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to do, I noticed 3M, obviously a bunch of others that I applied for, but 3M gave me the opportunity to really just explore once again what I want to say no to, right? So 3M, Fortune 1 company, we got 4 different divisions across a number of different industries. And the role itself, the SMD program at the time, really afforded me the opportunity to explore what different functions look like within different industries. So 3M has, healthcare, consumer, transportation, electronics, old school,
Tape,
old school industry related
packaging.
materials like
Yeah.
adhesives, right? And everything in between. But supporting that, there's also an opportunity to work as, working with the CMOs, working with the CFOs, working with the chief strategy officers. So to be able to apply that across all the different industries and then sit at the top from a corporate strategy perspective and help guide the macro narrative around how the different divisions would work both together and separate, I thought was something that I really wanted to do. So yeah, I put a lot of my eggs in that basket, and I was fortunate enough to get a role at 3M.
And now that you're at Microsoft, huge company, how do you get the matrix to work for you? I had a short stint at a matrix-oriented
There we
company.
go.
It's really hard.
Right, right. I think the thing that I learned first and foremost is it's maybe not so important to meet everybody as much as it is to
You
meet the
can't
right
meet
people.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't meet everybody. I mean, you would get nothing done. So with Microsoft, they do a really good job. My managers do an amazing job. Kenny and Kelly encouraging me to say, "Hey, you need to meet this individual. They work in this particular product group. They can align you with X, Y, Z, depending on the use case." There's so many different products, and then within the different products, similar to 3M, there are BD leads. There are people who are involved in different sales motions. There are people who are involved in customer support. There are people involved in compliance, et cetera, around deal structure and things of that effect. So really knowing who the number one person is, right? And then allowing the dominoes to take place after that, I think is really important. So starting with the top is what I learned. And the more top to top engagements you have and developing
Yeah.
those relationships in a deeper way to help expedite the process saves you a lot of time, energy, and stress.
But the top people are the busiest people, right? And the people in most demand. How do you get their attention?
Yeah, I try to make it a point. Anytime I'm engaging with someone, I'm offering them something before I ask for something. That's my number one. And maybe it's just the Southerner in me. I feel guilty asking for something unless there's some value in it for them. So just like anything, we're always competing for people's time and attention, right? It's an attention economy, right? And to that end, if I'm asking some CVP or exec, what have you, for 5, 30 minutes, they're measuring that meeting against the litany of things that they have to do,
Yeah.
right? So it's not, hey, let's just talk. I want to figure something out. It's,
I want to pick your brain. Yeah.
gosh, please stop if I get another one of those on LinkedIn. But it's, it's, hey, this is the opportunity. This is why I think there's value. This is how I see you adding value. This is maybe another way that you could add value. This is the desired outcome, and this is the deadline, just to kind of manufacture a little bit of that sense of
Yeah.
urgency. It inspires on their end the need to say, you know what, let's get on the phone with Micah. Let's see what's going on here, and we move from there. So,
And did someone teach you that, or is that kind of your parents
yeah,
kind of brought you up that way? It's like this is how to approach people and strangers and win them over.
yeah, a little bit. So, I mean, my dad, a long time trial attorney, right? And before that, he was a CPA. So he did a bunch of corporate law and stuff like that. Sitting in and seeing him engage with people, right? And understanding that in any relationship or partnership, right? The assumption is that there's, some sort of asymmetrical exchange between the two
Yes.
parties. But that can't be measured in a very static way, right? It
Right.
has to be measured against time. So to that end, I always recognize the more I can invest on the front end in providing support, right? Like I always joke, it's good to there's a southern saying, it's good to fix your roof while the sun is shining, right? So if I'm in a place where my deal flow maybe isn't as robust, what have you, I look for opportunities to engage with said people that we mentioned earlier to say, hey, how can I add value to whatever it is you're doing while I have the capacity, while I have the time, right? And it's not necessarily simply because, oh, well, when I want something, I want you to be able to do it for me,
Right.
because knowledge is transactional. There might be an opportunity for me to learn something and doing something for someone else that then requires me to not have to call you later on because I know, oh man, there's a compliance program that's it's just literally plugging in something into a CRM. I don't need to necessarily reach out to somebody, right? Which also that knowledge share within my team helps us save time and become more efficient and things to that effect. But yeah, I learned it a lot from my dad and my mom, just seeing how they engage with people. And then, as you matriculate in the corporate world, there are different ways, right, to approach things. And certain professions have similar personalities, right? So the way I engage with the engineer is not the way I engage with the CFO, is not the way I engage with the business leader necessarily. While there are some themes, it's once again going back to the programmatic versus bespoke, it's different depending on who exactly I'm engaging with. So yeah.
Right. And that's smart because most people fix the roof when it is raining, because that's when the pain is felt.
Way harder. It's way harder.
Way harder. Yeah.
Way harder. Fix it while the sun is shining.
And, and I think you've kind of seen that lesson with staying in touch with college friends, NFL friends, NBA friends. And a lot of
Exactly.
people don't do it until they need it. And then it's too late because people just sense
Oh,
it.
oh yeah.
Oh, it's been
Oh
3 years. Now he's calling.
yeah. How convenient. Brian, I love the podcast. I have some questions. Can I pick your brain? It's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, here we go. You know what's coming.
Yeah. And where do you see yourself taking your career?
Yeah, I think right now I'm super fortunate that I'm doing something I'm really passionate about. And so, my mantra this year is kind of, what's next for me is right now. So I always think the best marketing and networking you can do for yourself is be really good at whatever it is you are doing. So that's my goal right now. So I was fortunate enough to win, rookie of the division a couple quarters ago. I'll be at Microsoft about a year next month. So it's been really exciting, really rewarding. I want to get really good at what I'm doing. So that's my principal focus. I kind of map out my life in 2-year increments. I have a macro goal of what it is I want to do and all those things, and that's great. But all of those things involve partnerships, sales, and a lot of technology, all the things that I'm doing now. So I'm building up that toolkit right now, and that's kind of just my principal interest is just getting really good at this role.
And do you have the kind of like the same mindset as you did in the NFL with the daily
Oh yeah.
routines, the practices, and the
Oh
morning
my
routine?
goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Right. I think it's,
You
we
doing
always say control the controllables. Yeah. Control the controllables. If I can control, and make no mistake, I'm not one of these biohacking performance freaks. I'm not out here measuring every calorie or anything like that, right? Let's be
Yeah.
clear. Uh, but I do have a regimen, right? So I know Sunday through Thursday, more or less what I'm eating, what time I'm working out, when I'm sleeping, when I'm doing my deep work, when I'm not doing my deep work, right? What types of tasks I'm doing in the beginning of the week versus the end of the week. Now, in that is varied and it fluctuates, right? But that's part of life. That's part of the ebb and flow of a sales cycle of whatever it is that you're engaging with. But yeah, I do think, to your point, having that same NFL college football programmatic way of addressing things offers you the opportunity to then extend your intellectual capital for more deep deep task, and not the one-on-one, like what am I wearing or what am I eating or where am I
Right.
gonna where am I gonna work if I'm a remote worker? Am I working at the house today, or am I working at WeWork or some co-working space, et cetera, et cetera? It helps give you the opportunity to manage your time and your priorities in a way that's most productive.
And what do you attribute to winning that Rookie of the Year? What do you think contributed to
Well,
that?
well, yeah, it's an individual award, but it's a team. It's a representation of the team, right?
Yeah.
So I'm super fortunate that the people on our team and the HTP team, they come from a number of diverse backgrounds, right? So we've got bankers, we've got technologists, we've got finance individuals, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a sponge, right? You talk to me, I'm going to listen, I'm going to write it down, right? I've got notes right here. I'm always paying attention to what's going on. And I think the collective brain share across all of them has kind of just inspired me in ways to kind of curb that sort of learning curve, excuse me, to curb the learning curve, doubling down on that one, to learn more about the role and just exercise those best practices. So that's what's been most beneficial. And yeah, the output of that is me performing in such a way and presenting myself in such a way to where I can receive some sort of award, which is great.
And working at big companies, I'm sure you've seen a spectrum of people, skills. What differentiates the people who are doing really well from the people who just aren't getting it?
Yeah, I think it's representative of what's going on in the economy in general. The thing that helps most people is just kind of that sustained intellectual curiosity
Yeah.
and openness. I'm a big fan that, hey, look, there's some things that you should know how to do, right? And you should feel confident that you know how to do. And everyone has their skill set, and they say, look, I know I'm good at this. I'm not questioning this. Okay. But there are also a number of different elements around whatever role you have, where it's you need to be constantly be expanding in your ability to engage with whatever material that's coming out, such that it fits, your core skill set, but also the opportunities where you think you can improve. I think that's really the key, right? So technology is it's not static; it's dynamic, right? So it's if you were doing really well when there were motherboards and stuff, it's a different world.
Yeah.
It's just a different world. And once again, similar to football, similar to the NFL analogy I gave earlier, you have the opportunity to engage with it or not, right? And I think some of the people that do really well constantly challenging themselves. The good thing is you can kind of codify some of these your learnings in some of these these little like awards you can get, not so much awards, I forget what they call, certificates you can get to say like, hey, I learned more about generative AI. Hey, I learned more about cybersecurity. Hey, I learned more about quantum security, et cetera, et cetera. You can really go down a rabbit hole in that. But that signals that, hey, I'm learning, I'm progressing, I'm trying my best to put on the best version of myself in my role.
And I think you clearly manage that well, but it seems like you're very mission oriented. I think if somebody gave you something to do, you'd figure out how to get it done,
Oh yeah.
as opposed to saying that's not my bag. But you'd
Oh,
get it done.
and get it done. We'll get it done. We'll get it done. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about technology, right, Ryan? Is I think if you really want to learn something, if you really want to do something, there's an overwhelming amount of information and resources available to you. But you got to look, you got to dig,
Yeah, you got
right?
to dig it up. I mean,
Yeah.
I call that the new smart. It's like you don't have to
Mhm.
go to the special building and the special person and the special book. It's all
Right.
online. You have to search
Right.
for it maybe a couple
Right.
times and dig in a little deeper and
That's
ask
it.
some questions and
Mhm.
get overwhelmed a little bit.
Mhm.
But, and then how you mentioned kind of the know-it-all mindset, because I'm sure you run into that at big companies, just but people get comfortable in their groove
Sure.
and they're the expert in that groove and but they don't go outside of it and that's becomes their
Mhm.
limiting
Mhm.
factor.
Mhm. That's true. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've been exposed to a lot of different salespeople, both internally and externally.
Right.
Well, what do you think makes a great salesperson?
I, there are a number of different things that make for a great salesman, right? That's the business school answer, is not directly answering the question and leaving it open ended. But 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 for me, I think the number one thing to be a good salesman is to understand the nature of the relationship you have between whomever it is your point of contact, right? And so it's and in that it's layered, right? It's who are the key decision makers, who are you engaging with, what are they motivated by, right? And what is your relationship with said individual? What kind of relationship does that individual want to have, right? And I think when you start to master and understand those things, you can then start to infuse different things like a sense of urgency around the deal, right? A sense of confidence around the deal, a sense of negotiation around the deal, so it's not as static and cut dry. But you got to kind of have those first four, and it all starts with the relationship and the understanding of the technology and business that you're selling. So.
Yeah. And do you map this back to football or maybe law with your dad? Because litigation in sales is
Yeah,
a, I mean, if you know people's motives, you're trying to
exactly.
distinguish between real and perceived.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, so we have a really good training in-house at Microsoft that I was fortunate to receive, and we joke, we call it the rooms in the house, right? And it's similar, and it's similar to what we were talking about earlier about what are the different motivations across the different entities within the org. And yeah, that's where it starts, right? Is understanding, okay, who am I talking to? What's going to help them? It goes back to earlier what we were mentioning. How do I get on the phone with the CVP? How do I keep them engaged? What's in it for them? Right? Because that also helps me prioritize, the engagement to say, okay, if this isn't of interest, if there isn't any value that we can add here, then, I don't have a quota, right? Like I'm a salesperson without a quota. I have a unique role, but I can stop the conversation, right? And we can pivot to something else or nothing else, right? But in understanding, okay, where are the different people within the respective rooms, I can then assign value to certain conversations and prioritize bringing in individuals on my side to say, okay, this individual needs to have a conversation about third party apps, right? This individual needs to have a conversation about security specifically. Okay, now we need to talk about DevOps. This person is going to be more responsible for the partnership details, so my compliance person needs to talk here, right? It kind of engaging and understanding the different dynamics around their relationship to my outcome and their outcome helps us better forge a plan together to say like, okay, Brian, I understand you're motivated by this. I'm going to make sure that's taken care of one-on-one. This is what I'm trying to do. This is why I think there's value in it. This is why I think we're uniquely qualified to do it. And we work together to figure it out. So yeah,
Yeah.
it starts with that sort of heat mapping, so to speak.
And you look at the whole game
The whole
a-
thing.
as opposed to one play.
Right. Yeah. And I think working at 3M really helped me with that, because at the time, there were four different divisions within 3M, and then there's corporate, which kind of sits atop of all of it. And it's analogous to like an elephant. If we're all blindfolded and we're touching an elephant, we might have very different ideas of what an elephant
It
is.
looks like.
But if we zoom out, we can see like, oh, okay, this is how this works, right? In the same way with business, I think any great salesperson, especially on the corporate side, um, it's imperative that you understand, where all the rooms are, and that you're seeing the full elephant.
Cool. Hey, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
LinkedIn, obviously, I work for Microsoft, so I'm going to push a product, so product. So LinkedIn is best. And yeah, whatever. If you're a unicorn founder or something to that effect, great. If you're a Soonicorn, also great. Reach out to me. I would love to add value and see what we can do to work together.